Welcome back to another video on this channel. Today we are talking about why I hate this book. The Sword of Kaigen by Emma Wong is one of the most hyped books of 2023. It's very hard to find any voice on the internet that did not love this book, except me, of course. If you love this book, you should leave now. This is going to be a rant video. Let's summarize what the book is about and what the book is trying to talk about first. For those of you who have not read The Sword of Kaigen, I don't know if you want to watch this video because I will be spoiling certain things because I need to talk about certain scenes to explain why I had an issue with the book in general. The book is mostly about Misaki. She is the main character. She is living in a very rural area of a world, very distinct and very disconnected from the rest of the world and her country as well. She's living in a very patriarchic society and village that really reinforces very conservative traditional values in terms of what a woman should be and what a man should be, and these get reinforced quite heavily. However, Misaki herself is not growing up in this bubble. She has lived in other areas and knows that there is more to the world and there are other positions and other ways of living for women out there. This is important because otherwise the book would make more sense. That's basically it. If someone tells you this is a fantasy book about fantasy and with magic, they are lying to you because the book is only about Misaki and her struggles in this society. The magic system and the rest of the world never get addressed until like some climax scenes or some conflict scenes that need to happen for some kind of action in this book. It's completely irrelevant for 90% of the time, and you will never get to know more about the magic system than the first 150 pages give to you. Let's start really slow with the issues that I had with the world building, and the writing in general. I was expecting to get a little bit more about the magic because someone pitched the book to me saying it is a great fantasy book with the magic system of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which people use constantly. And that is true, the magic system is kind of like that, but where Avatar: The Last Airbender really focused on the character development and used those bending techniques to characterize people and such, the magic is just an add-on, an expression of power in the Sword of Kaigen, and never really gets an in-depth explanation, any power levels, any resource. People just can do things in certain moments because the plot demands them to. The world building is also very weak because the first 150 pages of the book are just info dumping about the world. And here's the funny thing, you will love this. Everything you will learn, especially in this 90-page history lesson that you get at the beginning of the book, is completely irrelevant for the rest of the book. It's completely irrelevant for the world because it's all made up. It's made up, it's propaganda, and the book really takes its time to use 90 pages of your time, of your reading time, to tell you a fake history story in this world. The writing in general, the dialogues felt a little bit clunky. That's nothing I would fault the book for explicitly if it were overall a better book, but it did feel kind of weird to read sometimes because some characters in this book are quite young, but they talk like an adult, or they start thinking like an adult randomly, and it's really weird because there's no progress and there's no development that we can see happening to this character. It's just snaps, and in one moment it's a very delusional child and the next moment it's a super reflective young adult, and I don't quite get where this development happened. Maybe I missed something, but it was just very weird in terms of pacing and character development. That out of the way, let's talk about the characters and the overall messages that the book is trying to address. One of my major issues with The Sword of Kaigen is that it had so much potential. It's trying to talk about topics that are super important. It's trying to talk about topics that are very important to talk about in fantasy books in general, such as womanhood, marriage, forced marriage, in general, motherhood. Like, the book has a very unique way of actually trying to talk about motherhood. What do I do if I don't like my children? What do I do if I don't really wanted children in the first place? That's a very important question to ask because no one can guarantee you that you actually like your kids. I feel like this is not enough talked about especially in terms of fantasy books, where it's just like she's a mother and she's happy. And that's very binary, and there is more to that. So the book had an opportunity to actually talk about these issues, and that's the very rare moment where I actually felt connected to the characters and connected to Misaki, because those struggles were very interesting and emotional. However, the book kind of flatlines in how it deals with these issues. First off, Misaki as a character, like I said, knows how women live outside of this village. This is important because it's not like she's super dependent on her family. She lived multiple years without the support of her family and without her family in a foreign city with other people. She knows other people outside of this village and in this country. So when her dad tells her, you either have to marry this guy that I selected and be forced into marriage, or we disown you and you will have to leave this village, I couldn't quite grasp why Misaki would care. Because again, she knows other people. She could have easily said, well, then you might not be the family that I want. And the book could have taken a stand actually talking about chosen family at this point, making Misaki to be, well, just because we are biologically related doesn't mean I have to do what you say or even be emotionally attached to you. Yet Misaki chooses the forced marriage option, which again, I could not quite understand why she would do this, because for the next 15 years, she didn't have any contact to her family anyway. So the end result would have been the same, just with less grape and less emotionally isolated, toxic husband bullshit happening. So this is basically the starting off point and the whole plot of the book. The next 300 pages are basically Misaki being angry and frustrated at her fate that she chooses herself. I just want to put a reminder here. It's not forced upon her. Her family, like her dad, gave her a choice. He was not, I'm going to kill you or you marry this guy. He was saying, you will have to leave this family or marry this guy. She could have left. Maybe I'm too emotionally detached from like certain things and certain like relatives to understand this, but it was not a hard choice in my mind. So she spends the next 15 years married to this guy that is very emotionally detached, very toxic, very cold, very abusive even, and she is just angry and frustrated the whole time. And this anger builds, and this was obviously very relatable. Female rage is super valid, and this is something the book does well. The book actually shows very good how this frustration builds up in Misaki as a character. It falls flat though, again, because Misaki never tries to talk with other people. There's not an instance where she tries to communicate these frustrations with other people in her life. I'm not talking about people that reinforce those kind of standards. I'm talking about people that actually escaped those standards or trying to make the best out of it. There are other people in her life she could have turned to that would have understood her point of view. So in the end, she is super angry. She is frustrated with all of the things happening in the book, with all of the emotional damage and struggle she has been through. She just can't take it anymore. She is confronting her husband. Now, why is this fight even working remotely? We get in the middle of the book a multi-100-page flashback how badass Misaki is. She is literally living the stereotypical assassin's FMC. She is calling herself Shadow in this time. This is exactly the type of stereotype that has no place anymore in fantasy books, in my opinion. This is not even ironic. The book doesn't address this and doesn't even make fun of it or trying to make this in any kind of way, shape, or form a contextualization about how women are perceived or how this is like a thing or role women are forced into or characters are forced into. This is just Misaki is that kind of thing. And that's so 1998. However, this is the explanation why Misaki can fight at all. The fact that she hasn't touched a blade in 15 years, we will forget that for a second, because obviously she's just very angry, so she can fight. Before we can talk about the fight, we need to talk about her husband, her toxic, abusive piece of shit. And I'm not even arguing or defending this character. This is a completely valid point. This is a toxic, abusive type of character, as it is like literally in the dictionary. For this fight, however, this isolated scene that is super important to the messaging of the book and the characters, this person, their only shtick, their only characterization in this whole book is he is toxic, he is abusive, he is emotionally distant, and he is the greatest fighter in the world. He spends his entire life, every day, training and honing his skills. Okay, this is the type of person Misaki fights. So he challenges her husband to a duel, and obviously she could never win this, right? She hasn't touched a blade in 15 years. I'm not saying she couldn't win the fight in general. I'm just saying she hasn't trained in 15 years. Just a matter of endurance and just flow and being in your routine would make such a major difference in a fight to life and death in this kind of situation. So at one point, Emma Wang must have realized this as well, because a random NPC in shape of her brother shows up, tells her about some weird ability he has discovered one day before the fight. Obviously, Misaki masters this ability instantly and is able to push through and overwhelm her husband in this fight. Hasn't fought in 15 years, hasn't touched a blade in 15 years, but because this really strong ability that she discovered one day before and immediately mastered, she is able to win. Okay, let's take this, let's just accept this. Now would be a great time for an emotional moment and a heart-to-heart between those characters. I am not a fan of the messaging that violence is better than communication. I don't agree with that at all. But hey, this could have been a good moment for these characters to actually make a point in this book. And Misaki does ask her husband, why are you this way? Why are you so abusive? Why do you not care about these things that happen in your life and to our family? And her husband actually tells her. Her husband tells her his story. I'm not defending or trying to kind of, make this seem less worse or this person less of an asshole. He is a toxic, abusive piece of shit, but he is telling her. And his story is basically he's so emotionally detached because he could never handle his emotions, and so he retreated and fled into his magic. So he purposely detached himself from his emotions in situations where he feared he would otherwise be overwhelmed. And he did this so often that he has no real connection or empathy at all anymore. And he struggles to even be present in any kind of way because of that. And this single moment is the straw that broke the camel's back for me, because this would have been such a beautiful time for the book to talk about that the patriarchy and the patriarchic system is not only affecting women, it is affecting women in a very visible and probably stronger way than it does man, but it's also affecting man. The emotionally detached, strong provider, protector, don't show your weakness type of bullshit stereotype is a reinforcement that gets pushed down to man and indoctrinated into man from childhood because of the patriarchy. There are no emotionally intelligent men because we don't educate and we don't raise emotionally intelligent men. You cannot learn a skill you don't know about. You can never be good at something you never practiced. And so this would have been the single most important moment where the book actually could have made a difference and take a stand in talking about those issues. But it didn't. And this is basically the moment where my dislike for the book turned into actual derision. I actually started to hate and reject this book at this point, because Misaki, as a character that faced these issues, as a character that's so angry, that is so frustrated, she goes and tells her husband, don't be such a weak wimp, be stronger. And now, quote from the book, what kind of man are you that you cannot control your woman? Are we talking about the same issues? Did you not try to talk about equality, and did you not try to talk about how you wanted to be free and how you wanted someone to understand and connect with on an even field and conversation, and now you reinforce the same exact issues that led to this person like he is. This is exactly the reason why he is this way. There was another scene in the book where Misaki goes up to a little boy that is crying over his brother being burned because he died at some point, and Misaki tells him, "Stop crying, man, don't cry." I don't know what to tell you. This book is purely about the bait of female rage. It's like a marketing slogan, basically pushed down your throats. This book is surface level, so trying to be so progressive and talking about issues that it's ultimately just rejecting outright. It's rejecting those ideas. It's rejecting any kind of progress in these directions. It's actually a bad example on how those issues and topics would be implemented in the book. It's failing in every way and flatlining in every way in addressing these matters in any kind of meaningful, significant, progressive way. The end message of this book is women are angry, men are shit, man should be strong, don't cry, don't be weak, control your woman. And if you have an issue with that, and if you as a woman want to break out of that, you better fight your husband. I'm sorry, but I expect more in 2024. I'm sorry, I expect we moved past this stage. I expect a more nuanced approach to these issues, and that's why I'm so angry when I talk about this book. The book has so much potential and so many important issues that it's trying to talk about, but it just doesn't. Obviously, the topics that the book are addressing are important, and they should be more present in fantasy books. Forced marriage, womanhood, motherhood, how women are presented in fantasy books in and of itself is an issue that should be addressed. All of these things are completely true and valid, but even in books that are not predominantly dealing with these things, for example, the Realm of the Elderlings, which was written in 1998, addresses those things. The female character in this book are more nuanced and better developed than any character in the Sword of Kaigen, period. They are more progressive and feminist and more nuanced in their approach and their take and what it means to be a woman in any kind of society and how these issues can be addressed in a fantasy book than the Sword of Kaigen could ever be. And that is why I hate the Sword of Kaigen. Also because everyone tries to shove this book down your throat and no one seems to do any kind of reflection about this book. Am I really happy with the messaging of the book? Am I truly standing behind this, or am I just blinded by emotional shock value and like some slogans and tropes that are slapped on the cover for me to enjoy? Do I really think that this is the way women should be portrayed in a fantasy book? Is this really the way that I wish to solve conflicts? Is this really the messaging we should send to people reading this? If a husband is forced to read this, or a woman goes to her husband, read this book, this is really what it's about. What is he to learn, or what are young men that read this book to learn about themselves and how to act in society when the book itself tells them they should be not weak and control their women? I'm posing this question. You can leave a comment. If you like the book, say it. I don't care. It's fine. You are free to enjoy the book. I'm just opening a discussion. Not disliking you for liking the book. I'm just trying to have an open discussion about those issues and about those topics. And I think books should be critiqued fairly. I'm just talking about what I see in the book. Some points, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm off. Maybe I just didn't understand what the author was going for, but then it was really hard to understand in my mind. Anyway, leave your opinion in the comments. We will see each other in the next video.